See, everything around the Purple Heart is melted, but the snow on the Purple Heart is still there. I still got to get out here and clean all that stuff up. Something about the first driven virgin snow does something. Them cats, they do that all the time. They plan. They'll hiss up. Their old back come up real high, like they're gonna go into a fighting mode, and the whole time they ain't fighting, they're playing. Something about the snow that works as a buffer, similar towards how that they will fix up acoustics in a bigger building with foam because of the echoing. Snow basically works the same way as a buffering system to where it reduces the sound level to where even though you hear the sound has been buffeted because of all the snow. A lot of people don't know that. I just picked that up a while ago on Weather Channel. It's not that I'm a brilliant snow person, but it's always pleasant to see a first time driven white snow. And the reason why that I take so notice of it is because less than a week ago, it was up in the 70s or the 80s here, getting hot in northwest Tennessee. And now tonight, it's supposed to get down to about 23 or 24 degrees. Seeing the extremes once more of going from one perspective to another. Whenever I was a child growing up, usually whenever we would get our first touch of winter, which ordinarily was about this time of year, about the middle of November, it would get cold and it would stay cold. We'd have a few warmer days, but once it got down into the winter months, the ground would freeze, and in a lot of different incidences wouldn't thaw, sometimes until March or April. This is the day after 2022 Memorial. Out here at the St. Dale's Recovery System, St. Dale's Recovery Shelter. And I guess another reason why that I have a tendency of wanting to get out in the snow and kind of have that first familiarity of that childhood snow, whenever you were just a child growing up, is that we've reached such of a climatic moment with our environmental changes to the degree, wow, that flag is actually froze. That's the reason why I say snow and ice is hard on flags. It's because the way that our weather has been erratical, it's got to the point we may see it snow again this year, but then again we may not see another snow for the next 2 or 3 years. So whenever it does snow, in which to me a white driven virgin pure snow is inspiring to still see. But whenever it does come, I want to enjoy it and get out in it, even at my age, at the age of 61, because I know the crucialness of seeing it snow again may actually be slim to none. I got the Jolly Rangers flag flying this year in honor of our veterans, pertaining to a mission well done, a successful mission in what the Windmill Ministries was all about to begin with, going all the way back 30 plus years ago. And cats love to play. You can tell by looking at them, they must have some Persian in them because of the way that their tail is. Come on, y'all, get back here now. Come on. Come on. Come on, Tags. Come on, sissy. Come on back. Come on. Come on. They'll listen to me. If they don't stop and play first. They're brothers and sisters. And man, do they ever act like it. Ordinarily, they behave themselves inside the house because they know if they don't, I'll get on to them. But sometimes out here, I'll hear them screaming and yelling at one another and crying and hissing, and typical brothers and sisters. The Purple Heart Memorial. The day after Veterans Day. I put some newer stickers on my vehicle the other day. I was down in Dyersburg, and the guy down there in the mall, where I usually get my flags, that's where I usually get my bloody flag. That's a spotted flag that looks like it's been in battle. I put those stickers on my one, or the other ones have gotten faded. Just wanted to walk out here while the snow was still here. This morning when I first woke up, it was a whole lot more on the ground than what it is now. A great deal of it has melted. I can't believe that those two trees, which now all the leaves has finally fallen off of them. This tree right here, whenever I first moved here 8 years ago, was just a sibling. And it may have been as high as what that sign right there is. Just a twig, basically. A little more than a twig. Coming to find out, my son Nicholas was out here a few years before that, before I come back in 2014, out here shooting with a gun. And he wound up wounding this tree. He hit it. I don't forgot now where it was at, but it was scarred. That stunted it. That caused it to not want to grow. And for about 2 or 3 years, according to David, my brother, it had basically become dormant. I think this is the scarring right here from it, where he hit it with a 30-30 or a 30-06 and scraped it real bad. Anyways, whenever I moved out here in 2014, I started watering this tree, and I'd water it just like watering a plant. And like I said, it was just about as high as what I am right here, my head height. And since then, this particular tree has grown to be a good, shadeable, good size good-sized tree. These two trees right here, which I think are cottonwood trees, I ain't for sure, they didn't even exist. And all of a sudden, they popped up overnight before anybody took notice of them. And I believe it was 2015, it may have been 2016. And David said that if I didn't cut them down, that they was going to give me some trouble. And I thought about it, and I thought, well, God must have put them two trees there for a reason. I'm going to let them grow. And I haven't watered them. I didn't pamper them like I did this tree. But from the looks of things, height-wise, between the height of the bigger tree, the oak that I was watering right there, versus that tree that I wasn't watering, there's not really a whole lot of difference in the height. Maybe about 7, 8, 10 foot. Somewhat of a difference in the height. I think those cottonwood trees, if that is a cottonwood, are fast-growing trees anyway, kind of like your apple pear trees. I don't know if they're stronger than the apple pear tree. I know I planted a bunch of apple pear trees over in Lexington, Tennessee, on the Juneau-Barkington Road there, outside of Barkington School. And man, did them trees ever take off. Seems like I planted about 25, 20, something like that. Since then, there's been a storm or two that's hitting that area. That's broken some limbs out of one, and I think one completely got destroyed. But those are some fast-growing trees too as well. The apple pear trees. They're just not good sound, strong trees whenever it comes to enduring the wind and the elements thereof. They're not like an oak or a maple or even a pine. A pine has some pretty good strong elements about it. This was Mr. Almus's original milk barn right here. What he would do, he would bring his Holstein or whatever cow he was milking right there. He'd bring it through that door, one at a time. And this was considered a modern day milk barn at the time whenever it was built. And if you'll see the way that he's got it built in there, that slab of concrete, that cow would come in there. You see the railing right there? See the railing? That would prevent the cow from toppling over the edge. He would milk the cow and then herd the cow either out that door, there used to be a door there, or he would back the cow up, because he actually fixed it to where he could do 2 cows at once right there. And of course, the reason for having it up about 2.5 foot high, 2.5 foot high, was so that it would make it easier to actually milk the cow. That way you wouldn't have to get down on a bucket to be able to grab a hold of their udders just to milk the cow. He had done that, built this milk barn, just about the time that we moved back here in 1967. And then later, a few years later, he built him another good-sized milk barn over here. You can't see it, but there's a big slab of concrete over there. And the reason for it is because that was his newer milk barn, to where he could milk like 4 cows at one time. I'm guessing that that building right there was probably built somewhere around the era of shortly after World War II, probably in the 50s. This other milk barn that he built out there was probably built in the late 60s, early 70s. You can still see a little bit of the shed out there if you get to looking real close. It's difficult to see. See the boarding? See the boarding right in there? And then the rooftop, see the roof? So part of it is still there, but he got old, feeble, couldn't do his work no more, and had to get out of the milking business. And of course I knew them whenever they was in their elderly years. Here's a better view of it right here where you don't have near as much vegetation in the way. Still standing. Back then, even a barn was meant to go through the test of time. That to this day is still standing. I haven't been on this property since one other time that I was permitted to get on that property whenever I first come back here in 2014. And since the people that we lived across from, the owners of this property, we had a falling out, I was told never to get back on this property again. And to this day, I've never gotten on that property again. Those ain't neighbors that react and respond the way that these people did just because I come back here to live out my remaining life at 291 Thompson Road, Sharon, Tennessee. Those are enemies that act that way. Not friends, not neighbors, not even acquaintances act that way, but enemies act that way. And it wasn't until my brother died in 2017 and I wound up going to jail illegitimately because of what the courts was protecting out here, which was protecting evil and evil people with evil incentives, evil motives. And it wasn't until these people started dropping down dead with either heart attacks, aneurysms, strokes, ODing, running off roads and hitting bridge railings or hitting trees, or meth lab labs burning up and burning their homes up. It wasn't until they finally got the ideal that, hey, we may want to leave this guy alone over here. Because if I was solely dependent upon the Weakley County judicial system pertaining to the law in this area to have done it for us, we would have been waiting till hell froze over. And to this day, it irritates me to think about how that David, my brother, wound up being collateral damage on account of the way that these heathens was coming after us, hunting us, terrorizing us from day to day, sometimes 4 or 5 times a day. And the judicial system sat idly back and allowed it to happen. Tommy Moore, Mike Pence, Tommy Thomas, the prosecuting attorneys, the other law enforcement agencies around in this area, as well as various attorneys, as well as the sheriff that was elected 9 different times out here, Mike Wilson. They got blood on their hands pertaining to my brother that died out here. They got blood out here on their hands that one day they'll stand in front of the Creator, that they will give an account for the things that they have done or the things that they didn't do that they should have done pertaining to dereliction of duty. I cannot emphasize upon that enough, knowing that at one time I had a great-grandfather that lived out here that was part of that same system, that was out here protecting people because of the needs at that particular point in time, that was doing his job effectively and efficiently up until basically the 1929 Depression hit. And after World War I, everything basically changed in America, and that's whenever they was going to start doing things more in a civilized order. And they basically shunned him and told him that the things that he took a part of was bad. Today, they recently had I don't know if it was a sheriff over in Troy, Tennessee, or if it was just the chief justice system over there, chief of police or whoever. But anyways, he died over in Troy, Tennessee, to give you some sort of differences in the way people are today. Whenever he died, they couldn't have enough room in the funeral home because so many people was paying their respects to that particular individual that, as far as I know, must have done a pretty decent job pertaining to trying to bring law and order into Obion County over there in that area. And that's the way political officials are supposed to be treated. They're not supposed to be shunned. They're not supposed to be degraded. They're not supposed to be demoralized. They're not supposed to be put down, because that was the way that the people elected people to help to bring forth that type of law and order. Whenever I left here in this area, I think it was in about 1990, whenever I left here in this area, we went and lived 5 years in Milan, Tennessee, then lived in 10 years in Jackson, Tennessee. I lived a couple years in Lexington, Tennessee, and then I lived on the road for about 7 or 8 years, going from state to state, from calamity to calamity, catastrophic event to a catastrophic event, basically being a storm chaser. But whenever I come back here, the drug problem and the attitudes of these people was 1,000 times worse than what it was before I ever left in 1990. Just to give you some sort of an ideal towards how that the politics in Weakley County failed the decency of the decent people that lived here. Now, if you was abiding by the syndicate and you was part of that culture or part of that group, you could basically get away with murder as long as it wasn't too obvious, and still never have to do any type of time or be penalized by their judicial justice system, because corruption breeds more corruption. And as I've said before, your political system is only as good as the people that put them in power. And whenever you have a corrupt people that's got their cronies that get elected from year to year to year, and whenever you have a cliquish type syndicate system to where if you was like my brother and I, if you so much as stepped on a wooden nickel, you was going to have to get an account for it. You was going to be punished for it. You was going to have to be ridiculed and criticized for stepping on this wooden nickel, versus other people out here selling drugs, prostitution, molestation of children, and living like basically heathens. that could get away with whatever that they wanted to get away with, because it was the elected officials that was elected out here that catered to those people. Catered to those people. And you know, the sad thing about it is, I had no idea that the Wiccans right up the road there, less than probably a half a mile from where I live in the direction that I'm pointing my camera at right now. Actually, it'd probably be more in this direction. Right here, there's a major highway. You can see how that small little hill right there starts going up right there with a little bit of white snow right there. If you go beyond that, there's a big palace out there with a bunch of gargoyles all over it. I had no idea that those people had moved in to this neighborhood, which once more speaks volumes about the neighborhood, that would allow for something like that to move in out here without them objecting to a bunch of cult leaders that come out here to set up shop. But come to find out, just in Weakley County alone, there was probably about 1,000 members, not counting the members over in Reeves, not counting the members over in Obion County, not counting the members throughout all these other little counties, that was basically ruling the roost out here in a syndicate type dirty money way. And if they would have had their way whenever I first come out here, they would have run me as quickly off of 291 Thompson Road and 430 Beech Grove Road, which is the next address down from here. They would have run me out quicker than I come in if they'd have had their way. Because that's what they wanted. Why did they want that? Because they had already set up shop in how that they was going to perform and how that they was running the show. They had already burnt their bridges with me over the seeds that I had already planted out here pertaining to my message. These was the very people that was against peace, even though they talked about peace out of one side of their mouth. White man speaketh with forked tongue, in the degree towards, they didn't want peace. They wanted molestations. They wanted rapes. They wanted murders. They wanted drug-induced people. They wanted all this pornography. They wanted all this other ill willness to go on throughout the countryside. And it wasn't just here in Northwest Tennessee. Let's clarify that real quick. It's all over this country that this paranormal behavior had invaded this country. So one day when somebody may get a hold of this particular video and they listen to this video and they say, my God, was those things actually occurring down there in that area during the time that this guy was living down there? And somebody's going to say, yep, they sure was. That was the type of resistances, the movement that he had to come up against pertaining to those that wanted him dead. Those that wanted to destroy his life. Those that was dead set that they wasn't going to be satisfied until there was blood on the floor. And that's pertaining to the prosecuting attorneys that David and I went to before a tornado took all their luxurious honing areas out. That was their opinion about myself and David, that they wasn't going to fight for us. They was basically going to throw us to the wolves, and they could have cared less about anything that was going on in our lives out here at 291 Thompson Road or at 430 Beech Grove Road. And I'm just so glad today I get to tell my story pertaining to David Jeffrey Jackson. That, isn't it such of a mysterious coincidence that I picked out this vehicle for my brother, this Durango. He purchased it, had to spend about $500 for some front end work over in Dyer to have some ball joints and linkage arms removed. And whenever he goes to get his vehicle registered, they hand him a plate, and the plate has 666 on it. Isn't it amazing how that the truth finally comes out pertaining to a group of people that was dead set that they wanted any and everything that represented godliness, our true righteousness, our justifulness, that they wanted it to either be gone or they wanted to plant it and give it the imagery towards it being evil versus it being good. Because there was nothing at all wrong or evil about my brother. He made his mistakes just like the share of many others who have made their mistakes. But David didn't have a criminal file. David was a victim of circumstances. My brother David was part of their collateral damage. Thank you for listening. Good luck to each and every one of us. God bless America. God bless America's endeavors. And God bless our troops pertaining to the Camp Grizzlies compound, a special refuge center, post 291. David paid for that sign, and I put it up there. And that's where it's going to remain. God bless. Shalom.